Reeves Immigration Law Group now brings you Immigration Law on Your Side.
Alright, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Happy Wednesday dito sa Amerika and Thursday naman dyan sa Pilipinas. Maraming salamat for joining us. This is Immigration Law on Your Side and napakainit once again ang pag-uusapan natin mga Pilipino, especially dito sa Las Vegas. Tutok na J-1 visa ang pag-uusapan natin. Matagal nang nai-request nito sa atin na attorney ng mga kababayan natin, especially here in Las Vegas. Ang daming mga naka-J-1 na mga teachers at ang tanong nila ay palagi tungkol sa waiver ng 2 years residency requirement for J1 and kung ano daw po ang mga options ng mga kababayan natin kung sila po ay mag-expire na ang kanilang J1 visa. Mga kababayan, tutok lamang kasi many people are coming to the United States on an exchange visitor visa or otherwise known as the J1 visa. These individuals were approved to participate in work-study-based program visitor programs here in the United States. But after working in the US for several years, marami mga kaibigan natin gusto nang manirahan dito sa Amerika, but they cannot do so because of the 2 years physical presence residency requirement to their home country. But what if they decide to stay? Alamin natin ngayon, kasama natin, napapanood nyo sa screen from San Francisco, California, Attorney Flomy Diza ng Reeves Immigration Law Group who will help us understand the ways for you to stay here in the United States if you have a J1 visa and you have a 2-year residency requirement. Magandang gabi po sa iyo, Attorney.
Magandang gabi, Kuya Johan, at binabati na rin natin lahat ng mga listeners and viewers natin ng PHLV Radio. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. At yes, marami ang magtatanong sa atin, Kuya Johan, hindi lang yung kukonsulta sa atin regarding how to stay after the expiration ng kanilang J1, right? And they're subject to residency requirement. Marami rin tayo nakukuha mga messages dito sa ating mga Facebook account, mga social media accounts regarding the removal or waiver of the 2 years residency requirement. So, sabi nga ni Kuya Johan, tumutok po kayo dahil marami tayong pag-uusapan ngayon dahil may mga development din sa Pilipinas, especially dun sa no objection waiver na pag-usapan natin mamaya.
Naku, Attorney, even here in Las Vegas, even mga community leaders natin, talagang nagpupulong-pulong sila, nagtatanong kung anong pwedeng gawin para sa ating mga kababayan under a J1 visa. But let's backtrack a little bit, Attorney. Just give them an overview of what J1 visa is all about. Ano po itong J1 visa, Attorney?
Yes, ang J1 visa, mga kababayan, ay non-immigrant visa. So in other words, it's a temporary classification ng visa. They're authorized to stay for those who intend to participate ng approved program na banggit mo kanina for the purpose of teaching. Marami tayo dyan, mga teachers, hindi lang sa Las Vegas. May mga client po tayo sa North Dakota, sa Florida, sa Chicago, sa Illinois. So marami po tayo all over the US. So that's instructing or lecturing and even studying, or observing and conducting research. Marami rin mga researchers natin mga client and consultation and demonstrating specialist skills, receiving training or receive graduate medical education or training in the United States. So ito yung itong qualifications ng mga J1, at siyempre ito yung mga professors or mga scholars, pwede mga doctors dito, mga nabanggit natin, mga researchers at mga students, trainees, teachers, specialists, nanis, kasama din po yan sa ibang mga bansa kagaya ng Brazil at Eastern Europe. Marami po tayong mga client dyan at camp instructors. So ito yung mga examples sa mga professions or mga students who are coming here on the exchange visitor program.
Attorney, if our kababayan is still in the Philippines and they get wind about the J1 visa, ay naku, mukhang magandang mag-apply ng J1 visa. How does this work? Do you have to have a sponsor? Pwede pa itong nag-google ba ito, Attorney? Itong mga ito ay naghahanap sila ng mga workers and then they're giving J1 visa. How do you get a sponsor, Attorney?
Yes, you need to have a sponsor, very specific yan, very basic. So you can search online or may mga agencies din naman who are connecting you to these sponsors. So you have to have that requirements state that before you can apply for this program, you have to have a program sponsor. And then accept po kayo on the exchange visitor program. So this applies not only for the students but also workers na gustong magtrabaho dito sa United States under J1.
All right. Okay. Assuming, attorney, mga kababayan will skip right away to some of the features of the J1 visa kasi nga ang meat of the program ngayon is about the waiver. Ano? Attorney, pagka halimbawa ikaw ay na-approve na ng J1 visa and you go to the United States, you have to work for your sponsor only, ano, attorney?
Yes, it is parang H1B yan, Kuya Johan, ang J1, kaya ito itong sponsored program, you're only allowed and required to work with the sponsoring employer. So you cannot work outside of the employer, right? So very specific po yan. Doon lang po kayo sa nag-sponsor po sa inyo.
All right. And next question, family members, nakakasama po ba sa principal, sa J1 visa holder, na pwede niyang dalhin yung kanyang spouse and children?
Yes, lahat ng mga non-immigrant visas, kasama po dyan ang legal spouse. Ibig sabihin po, legally married po kayo, right? At children below 21 are entitled to a J1 or J2 visa. Sila po ang, yun pang designation ng kanilang visa.
All right. And skipping right away, mga nagtatanong sa atin, yung spouse daw po bang nadala niya sa Amerika ay will he or she be eligible to work as well?
That's one of the advantages of a J2. They're allowed to apply for I-765, what we call yung work authorization or employment authorization document. Now, if you are the spouse or children of a J1.
All right. Okay. Mga kababayan, if you just joined us tonight, maganda pinag-uusapan natin ang J1 visa 2-year residency requirement. Marami nagtanong sa inyo dyan. So sasagutin po yan ni Attorney Diza at kung ano pa mga options if mag-expire na ang inyong visa. Attorney, isa pa sa mga mainit na tinatanong ng ating mga kababayan is say for example, nandito na sila, yung kanilang American dream ay kanilang naamoy na ang kanilang American dream. Will they be able to, say for example, get another sponsor para sa immigrant petition while they are on a J1 visa?
Yes, ang petition na posible sa kanila, Kuya Johan, ay either I-130, right? Petition from, petition from a U.S. citizen family member, kagaya ng spouse, children, or parent. Pwede silang ma-filean at pwede rin silang mag-file ng I-140. The only difference, of course, is kung sila po subject ng 2-year residency requirement, this kind of petitions will be useless. Kasi hindi mo magagamit yan kung subject ka ng 2-year residency requirement and you're not able to get an approval for the waiver. So you need to consult an immigration attorney if it is advisable for you now to file the I-140, which is the employment visa petition, or the I-130. So we have to strategize. So it's still better to have something and discuss kung paano po kayo makakuha ng green card later on, because as we yung topic natin ngayon is how to remove or how to obtain a waiver of the 2-year residency requirement.
All right. So before tayo tumawid, attorney, on discussing the 2-year residency requirement, why it's in place and how you can get waived for that requirement, attorney. Isang tinatanong nila kung say for example patapos na yung kanilang J1 visa, is there a way to sort of extend the J1 visa validity?
Yes, a very good question, Kuya Johan, kasi if you file for a waiver at nasa first first 3 years pa lang inyong status, kasi usually binibigyan ka ng 3 years and it can be renewed for another 3 years depende sa sponsor pin ninyo, right? You can apply for extend for a J1 visa. I have seen many clients, most of them were extended another 3 years J1, and at that point, once you know that you're given another 3 years, that's the time you discuss with a lawyer kung ano yung options nyo. Although, sa una pa lang, pagpasok pa lang ninyo, okay na rin i-discuss ang inyong options kasi baka hindi kayo extend ng inyong sponsoring employer.
All right. Okay, so mga kababayan, we're right here in the juiciest part of the night. Pag-usapan na po natin, attorney, itong 2-year residency requirement, kung bakit ito ay in place at bakit kailangan umuwi for 2 years ating mga kababayan natin na under J-1 visa. Attorney, ano po ba itong 2 years residency requirement na ito and why is it in place?
I just wanna, before we proceed that, Kuya Johan, correct ko lang yung sarili ko kanina. Ang maximum pala nito is 5 years. So, basically, mga kababayan, you have that maximum of 5 years, which you have plenty of time, no, to strategize your case, whether you file for a waiver or, or other options na pag-usapan natin ngayon. Now, ito yung ating 2-year home country physical presence requirement. Ibig sabihin po is you agreed when you apply for a J-1 non-immigrant visa to come to the US to participate in this program, you are also promising na hindi ka mag-stay sa US, right? You have to go back to your home country, diba? So most of the J-1 visas are subject to this 2-year home country physical presence requirement that requires that you have to go home and return to your home country for at least 2 years after your exchange visitor program is ended. So take note of the word home country. So let's say galing kayo ng Pilipinas, dun po kayo galing, right? And then pagkatapos ng J-1 po ninyo, lumipat po kayo sa Canada. So kahit naka 2 years na kayo sa Canada, hindi mo na comply yon because the definition of the law is home country. So sa Pilipinas po dapat kayo. So it is part of the US law, right? The Immigration and Nationality Act, that you cannot return home for 2 years. If you cannot return home for 2 years, you have to apply for a waiver. So ang Department of Homeland Security must approve that waiver before you can change status or adjust status in the United States. So bakit may requirement na hindi lang sa agreement ninyo sa J-1 program po ninyo, bakit nire-require po kayo na mag-render ng 2-year home country physical presence requirement, no? Kasi most of the J-1 are funded by the government, no, or government funded exchange program. So finance siya in whole or in part, or directly or indirectly ng US government or yung Philippine government kung galing po kayo sa Pilipinas. Now, yung mga sitwasyon din where medical education or training, right? So pag kayo exchange visitor entered the United States to receive a graduate medical education or training, kailangan din po ninyo to render 2-year home residency requirement. And dito nagfo-fall yung mga teachers natin, specialized knowledge or skills. Nasa listahan sila ng skills list. So the exchange visitor is a national or permanent resident of a country which has deemed the field of specialized knowledge or skill is necessary to the development of the country as shown in the exchange visitor skills list. So teachers po kasama yan sa skills list. So may mga sitwasyon, Kuya Johan, na ang makikita mo ito, no, when you apply for J-1 visa, no, at the embassy pa lang, right? J-1 visa subject to 212E. Yung 212E na to, ito yung provision ng Immigration and Nationality Act that requires you to go home and render the 2 years residency requirement. Now, may mga sitwasyon na ang mga kababayan natin na walang tatak, di ba? So, may mga client nagkukonsulta sa akin, yung principal J1 walang tatak ng subject ng residency requirement, samantalang mga J2, yung asawa at anak, meron. So, they asked me, attorney, so hindi ako subject ng 212E, ng 2-year residency requirement, can apply or transition from H1B, from J1 to H1B, or can I apply for a green card now dahil hindi ako subject ng to home residency requirement? And the answer is no, right? It's not the the visa that appears on your visa, right? Whether there is a restriction or not, but the nature of your visa, which is J1, and the nature of your job, which is a teacher, right? So kasama ko dun sa skills list. Kung hindi teacher, halimbawa, and you are not sure kung kasama ko sa skills lists, you can always request for an opinion from the Department of State whether or not yung job po ninyo requires or falls under the skills list, no? At they give you an opinion whether you would be subject to 2 years residency requirements.
All right. Mga kaibigan, para sa mga late tuners natin, pinag-uusapan po natin ang J-1 visa home residency requirement na 2 years, na waiver for the 2 years home residency requirement. Mga kaibigan, tumutok lamang at i-comment dyan sa baba ng ating feed right now ang inyong mga questions para sagutin po ni Atty. Diza. Kung hindi maumabot sa ating program, we'll make sure na makakaabot po kay Attorney. Attorney, isa sa mga itinatanong nila is nabanggit niyo yung J2 kanina, yung kanilang mga dependents. They are also always automatically required also itong 2 years home residency requirement?
Yes, so like for example, meron po kayong anak below 21 or yung asawa, legal spouse po ninyo, you also have to apply for the waiver, no, if you intend to stay. Right? Just because Kuya Johan, take note na the requirement na 2 years residency, ibig sabihin ang daming restrictions sa inyo. Right? So as we mentioned kanina, from J1, hindi ka pwedeng mag-change of status. So for example, kayo po single, pumasok sa Amerika, and then you found love in the US and get married. Ano po, at US citizen po ang inyong asawa, you normally, yung mga H-1B or yung mga tourist visa, yung kahit mga overstay, pwede na silang mag-change of status. They just file the I-130 and the adjustment of status concurrently. In a situation ng mga J1, so may asawa pa sila, may anak sila, they cannot file the change of status. Ito yung restriction. They're telling you that you have to go home and, render 2 years home residency requirement. So that's one of the restrictions. You cannot change status, and then you cannot adjust status into a permanent resident. Yung change of status nga pala, ibig sabihin hindi ka pwedeng change from J1 to H1B. So kahit yung school is willing to file an H1B for you, hindi po pwede dahil you have to render 2 years residency requirement. Hindi ka rin pwede makakuha ng immigrant visa sa consulate. So for example, nandito kayo on a J1 program and then subject to 2 years, and then halimbawa, finalan po kayo ng magulang ninyo ng immigrant visa petition at nandyan na yung priority date ninyo at may interview na po kayo, right? Tamang-tama, sasabihin nyo, matatapos na ang J1 ko and I have to go back para sa interview ng aking petition ng aking nanay. The reality is, even if you go home and obtain the visa at the consulate, hindi mo pa rin makukuha yan, right? Because one of the restrictions, you still are required to render the home residency requirements sa Pilipinas. Or halimbawa, uuwi ka, then meron kang another employer na nahanap. As a teacher ngayon, as a registered nurse, for example, teacher and nurse po kayo, right? And then merong employer nag-file ng I-140 petition and priority date is available and, ready for interview. The same thing. You cannot accept, the petition, or you cannot continue with the petition because you have to render the 2 years residency requirement unless, of course, meron po kayong waiver na in-apply at ito po ay na-approve.
Okay. So, attorney, if you really want to pursue applying for a waiver, what are the telltales na pwede kang mag-apply ng waiver? Lahat po ba ng mga naka-J1 automatic? O sige, attorney, file mo ako ng waiver.
Yes, I mean may mga pag-usapan natin kung ano yung mga waivers na pwedeng i-file. I mean there are many conditions or requirements before you can file a waiver. And as we mentioned, timingan po ninyo kung kailan kayo magfa-file. And it's a good idea to consult a lawyer now kung ano yung options po ninyo, right? Whether you file a waiver or you apply for a petition or you have to go home or, what are the options? So this is really very important, mga kababayan. And as I mentioned, we have to go each and every of the what do you call this, the waivers. Unang-unang very popular, right, before the pandemic was the no objection statement. Right, so let's say your home country, the Philippines, for example, nabanggit mo kanina, Kuya Johan, before our program starts, yung CFO, yung Commission of Filipino Overseas under the Exchange Visitor Program, right? You have to request through the embassy, right? That no objection. So you have to send it yung mga requirements, you have to authenticate them. If you're married to a US citizen, you have children, children of a U.S. citizen, it was very easy in the past. I mean, there is documents. There are many documents required, but just being married to a citizen or having kids at that time, madali ang mag-file. Pero since 2001, right? Ang processing ng no objection statement application, may nirevise nila ang guidance nila, no, ng EVP, yung Exchange Visitor Program under the CFO, right? 2021. So it's been 2 years, no, na they don't accept or consider anymore that being married to a citizen or having kids, right, of a US citizen or parents, hindi na automatic na ina-approve ng CFO. So it's disheartening and frustrating dahil noon ang dali di ba, na makakuha ng waiver through the no objection statement. As we mentioned noon, madali pag citizen ang asawa po ninyo or lawful permanent resident or meron kayong minor child na US citizen, right? Or meron kayong or you're a religious worker, like you're a priest or a nun or a missionary, recognized religious denomination, automatic approved din sila noon. Or the applicant has an ailing family member. For example, meron kayong US citizen na parent who have medical condition, right? Pwede ring mag-request ng no statement, or the applicant is over age of 60 and above, dati pinapayagan na nila. So ngayon, based on the new guidelines ng EVP under ng CFO, right, they will strictly adhere to and be guided, sinasabi nila, by the integrity and purposes of the Exchange Visitor Program as well as the objective ng Philippine participation in the said program, ng pag-i-issue nila ng notice of no objection. So ito mga kababayan, so no objection, hindi naman totally wala pa yan. Hindi lang applicable ngayon sa being married to a US citizen or having relative in the US, but it not limited to applications from researchers or professionals whose continued stay in the US will advance the Philippines' national interest. So pwede nang i-grant yun. So kayo pong researchers or professionals whose continued stay in the US will advance daw yung Philippines national interest, pwedeng i-approve. Itong mga researchers na to and studies should be suitable to the current priorities of the Philippine government and will improve the quality of research and development in the Philippines. So, yun na lang, Kuya Johan. So, basically sa mga teachers natin, mga kababayan, they're stuck with the next waiver na pag-uusapan natin mamaya, which is basically yung hardship waiver. So yun na lang, unfortunately, sa mga kababayan natin na walang kamag-anak dito sa US, yung pangatlo siguro i-discuss natin, the persecution or asylum, yun yung next step na pwede na lang i-file. Pero itong hardship, Kuya Johan, we've been discussing hardship right, for the purposes of getting a waiver, right, if you commit a crime or misrepresentation, but for the purpose ng J-1, for you to obtain a hardship waiver, you have to file it with the Department of Homeland Security and Department of State, right? You have to convince that your family member would suffer hardship. So mga kababayan, kung kayo po may asawang US citizen or lawful permanent resident, may anak kayong below 21, or may magulang kayo na US citizen or lawful permanent resident, you have to establish that they would suffer hardship if your J-1 home residency requirement waiver will not be approved. So, yung hardship, mga kababayan, hindi madaling gawin yan. So, you have to be, consult an attorney, ano ang hinahanap ng immigration para ma-approve po natin ng hardship sa inyong mga kamag-anak. In a situation where you marry a US citizen, for example, especially if it's hindi Filipino, hindi nagsasalita ng Tagalog, right? And Caucasian, right? Or Filipino na lumaki dito na wala ng ties sa Pilipinas. So you can make an argument that it would be difficult for your spouse, right? If they accompany you in the Philippines and live there, hindi sila makakuha ng magandang trabaho, or kung mayroon sila medical condition dito, right? Nandito ang kanilang insurance. Now, sa mga kababayan natin nagtatanong mga bago, usually mag-asawa yan, Kuya Johan. Let's say, J1 pareho and then J2, yung asawa din nagdala dito, and eventually mga young couple yan and they have kids, right? So, ang gagawin natin is, since the child is born here in the US, and of course the child is a US citizen, we have to convince USCIS that the child would suffer hardship, right? Kung hindi sila ma-approve yung kanilang waiver. It's kind of difficult in a way to show hardship kasi bata pa eh. Lalong-lalo na kung healthy ang baby, right? At hindi pa gaanong, lumaki dito sa US, hindi pa nag-aral and we don't know kung ano pa ang kanilang condition, okay naman. Sometimes you really have to explore everything in your power to make sure and convince USCIS that there's an extreme or there's a hardship for the baby. For example, may mga allergies siya, may eczema siya, stuff like that. And then you have to do medical examination para makita kung anong problema ng bata. Small things like those, isama po ninyo sa pag-discuss ng hardship waiver para po ma-convince natin ang USCIS that you're able to waive the 2 years residency requirement.
Attorney, how about itong mga kababayan natin who are on a J-1 visa and they're working as, say for example, itong mga teachers, mga nurses, and obviously, especially here in Vegas, kulang na kulang ang mga teachers natin dito sa Clark County, no? That's the reason why maraming mga dumadating from the Philippines. Is there a possibility that this government agency, kung saan sila nagtatrabaho, or even the nurses themselves, kung merong isang government agency that could request or parang sabihin nilang kailangan namin sila so i-waive natin itong 2-year residency requirement nila because mahihirapan ng ang recruitment or pipeline of nurses or teachers if we let them go home. Can that be a way also, Attorney?
Yes, that would be the third way to request for a waiver for the 2-year home residency requirement. Request by an interested U.S. Federal government agency. Note of the word federal. So it should be a project for the interest of the U.S. federal agency. Yun ang requirement. And that agency has determined na pag umuwi po kayo, for the 2 years residency requirement would be detrimental to the interest, of course, of the U.S. government. So the agency can request an interested government agency waiver on your behalf, right? And the head of the agency will be designated and sign, yung request for that waiver. So that's also possible, Kuya Johan. It's not just too many, just because the designation or rather, it's a federal. It's not necessarily the school or your employer who would request unless it falls under federal and it shows that it would benefit the national interest of the U.S. government.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure, Attorney, we've opened this discussion para sa ating mga kababayan talking about that because they were asking us here at the radio station, why can't the school district just tell the USCIS na kailangan kami nila dito? And as you said, medyo masalimuot ang usapan na ito dahil nga dapat federal agency. So, Attorney, pagka mga ganon, pwede siguro silang kumonsulta sa inyo. Ano po, Attorney?
Yes, ang office po namin, Kuya Johan, we have office in San Francisco and Walnut Creek and Los Angeles. We have also office in Makati. In fact, I'm getting many consultations from all over the U.S., Kuya Johan. I have, after this consultation, I see that there's another one in Illinois asking about, the hardship waiver. And then I have one from, I think, Florida about married to a U.S. citizen, right? Kailang mga young couples, so it's a same-sex marriage. But the good thing about the hardship, that we can explore, right? In a same-sex situations, right? The Philippines does not recognize, right, until this time, same-sex relationship. And it's going to be difficult for them to be married in the Philippines, right? Dahil, it's not recognized, walang benefit as a married person. And not only that, there's a possibility that, yung mga benefits as a couple hindi applicable sa atin. So there's a way for us to explore that extreme hardship.
All right. Attorney, mga kaibigan, ang pinag-uusapan po natin, for those who just joined us, this is the J1, the waiver for the J1 residency requirement. Marami sa inyo ang nagtanong na nito over and over again. In fact, Attorney, isa sa mga tinatanong nila is ito, being a J1 holder, as you said at the top of the program, you were saying na, you should have every intention to go back to the Philippines or yung country of origin because it's a non-immigrant visa. Ang tanong nila, attorney, when you file for the waiver of the 2-year residency requirement, does that expose me, sabi nila, that my intentions that I will not be returning to the country? What is the danger? Meron bang negative effect as far as your stay here in the United States is concerned?
Not at all. In fact, you're exploring legal ways to stay in the U.S. and that's perfectly fine and acceptable. In fact, ang recommendation natin sa mga kababayan natin, just to remove that immigrant intent, wag naman pagdating ninyo dito, kaagad, you'll be filing a waiver, right? What we recommend is, of course, kagaya ng tourist visa that you have to stay for a while and you have to comply with what your visa is. So if you're coming here to explore and to visit and to as a tourist, then you have to do it for that matter. Hindi tipong you marry your fiancé right away and that would tantamount to like immigrant intent and you don't want that. The same thing with the J1, Kuya Johan, where after siguro ng extension ninyo. So kung 2 years, 3 years po kayo and then another extension para ma-maximize yung 5 years at nag-grant na po kayo, that's the perfect time for you to apply. Kasi caveat din sa mga kababayan natin, Kuya Johan, kasi pag sa unang term pa lang ninyo, no, yung let's say valid for 3 years po kayo or 2 years, and then nag-apply kayo kaagad at na-approve kayo, syempre hindi na po kayo extend dahil magkakaroon na ng tawag nito, kukontakin na po ang Department of State, ang inyong sponsor, right, that you have an approved waiver. So ideally, mga kababayan, is if you intend to extend yung inyong J1, right, for the maximum of 5 years, then do it after the approval na extension ninyo. And of course, reminder din natin, ang isang maganda pa pala, Kuya Johan, aside from the banggit natin kanina na no objection, ano pa ba yung interested federal government, and then yung hardship. Na-overlook din natin, kababayan natin, yung persecution, right? Persecution kasi dalawa yung option mo dyan eh. Either you file a no objection based on persecution. And what is persecution? Ito yung asylum that we discussed in the past where you are seeking refuge to the US because when you go back home, right, you are being persecuted because of your race, religion, political opinion, or social group. So for example, your family of politicians, and there was a time where your father was, had what do you call this, nagkaroon ng problema o nagkaroon ng tawag nito, opponent na very tawag nito, na to the point that you're being threatened about for your life, for your safety, for your properties, etc. Pwedeng gamitin yon, right? And also the social group. In fact, as we mentioned kanina, yung gay, for example, or homosexual, or same-sex, same-sex, not marriage, but yung social orientation po ninyo, yung LGBTQ, right? I think this is the appropriate word. Right? So for example, pwede rin yon kasi yan yung social group where, for example, wala naman kayong napangasawang US citizen, and but you're saying that I am a member of the gay community where when I go back, I cannot even, explore my sexuality. So pwede po yon based on persecution naman. And you don't have to do the waiver. Kapag na-approve yung inyong asylum, right, then you would be an asylee and be able to apply for green card. But either way, you can apply yung persecution based on the way as a waiver, or you can apply separately under asylum, right? The only good thing about the difference rather would be yung sa asylum, once you file the asylum and it will take longer, right? You will be able to get a work permit, which is 5 months after the receipt of the application. You can file for the work authorization where you're able to work. Let's say pag-expire na yung J1, di ba? At siyempre ayaw na kayo i-hire ng inyong employer, right? Dahil expire ng J1 mo. Either you can continue working with them by providing that work permit which is valid for 2 years, or you can apply for another job in a different company, or put your own business, or go back to work, go back to school. So yun ang advantage ng work permit under the asylum. In the on the waiver aspect, you have to wait for the approval, right? And then you cannot change status kahit na-approve halimbawa yung persecution mo kung wala kang employer na magpe-petition sa'yo, right? Or kung wala ka ring tawag nito asawa na magpe-petition sa'yo, then nababaliwala ang waiver approval mo.
Okay. Attorney, so with anything in immigration, it could be positive, it could be negative. How about kung na-deny yung iyong application for waiver? Can you appeal this, Attorney?
Unfortunately, unlike other types of denials that you can appeal, dito sa J-1 visa decisions, you cannot appeal ang decision, Kuya Johan. Ang good news dito, mga kababayan, is let's say na deny yung inyong waiver under one basis, you can review the other available basis. For example, as we mentioned kanina, na deny yung extreme hardship ninyo, right? O na-deny yung persecution because of a gay social membership in LGBTQ, then you get married, right? Then you can apply for that extreme hardship. So don't lose hope. Try everything in your power to avail of those waivers kasi wala namang res judicata dito, Kuya Johan, where you applied for a relief or a waiver, then you're stopped, di ba? Dito, nag-apply ka ng isa, then there are 5 options. So if there are 2 or 3 options for you, right? Keep on trying until you get approved.
All right. Okay, mga kababayan, we will be giving you an opportunity to still continue the conversation here at this episode of Immigration Law on Your Side by opening the chat room para ipaparating pa rin natin kay Attorney ang inyong mga katanungan sa ating Immigration Law on Your Side. Pag-uusapan po natin itong waiver ng 2-year home residency requirement ng mga J-1 visa. Attorney, pagka nag-expire, for example, ito, kailangan mo nang umuwi. How long? Of course, 2 years, no? Pagpabalik mo dito, kailangan ba pwede ng ibang sponsor or you're free na, no, to jump to any other status, ano, Attorney?
Yes, definitely. You can apply for a tourist visa, a student visa. You can also apply for another J-1, the same sponsor or different sponsor is fine, right? H-1B or possible, fiance or family base. So yes, after the expiration of 2 years, you are able to apply and hopefully granted any kind of visa that you want.
That's right. How about another J-1 na naman? Is that possible?
Yeah, that's still possible. Pero kung ako siguro ang mag-explore would be just because of the 2-year residency requirement. Ang hirap yun. So, in other words, if you are not able to file a waiver in the past, right, unless this personal decision nyo yan na gusto mong umuwi because, you have to do something back home and you really wanted to, share your experience and expertise, what you learned in the US to the home country, that's fine, right? If that's the goal, then go for it, right? You apply for a J-1 again or another type of visa that might fit your need and your qualifications.
All right. Attorney, dahil lang because of the word exchange, isa sa mga pumasok sa ating chat room ngayon, is it reciprocal daw ba? Yung mayroon bang programa din na ganito, yung mga taga-US naman ang host natin sa Pilipinas para naman matuto sila ng mga pwede nilang ma-pick up sa Pilipinas at i-apply nila dito sa US?
Honestly, I don't know the answer, and I haven't heard that the U.S. Probably there are, but I'm not sure if it's in place or no one else had consulted with me about Philippine immigration. They may or may not be same program.
Attorney, Attorney, napaka importante itong pinag-uusapan natin yon because even as I said on the top of the program, even our community leaders are very, very much engaged with this type of visa dahil nga po napakarami ng mga kababayan natin, especially mga teachers na nandito po sa Las Vegas under the J-1 visa. And as you said, hindi lang dito sa Las Vegas, all over the country, dito sa US. Speaking of all over the country, alam ko, Attorney, naging speaker kayo ng isang malaking conference ng association ng mga immigration lawyers sa Florida. Attorney, tell us about that at baka meron tayong medyo ma-pick up na updates from that conference.
Yes, it was a very successful conference attended by thousands of immigration attorneys worldwide, Kuya Johan. It was held in Florida from June I think 21 to 25, where we talk about managing moving parts of family-based immigration, and we receive many response and questions about, especially about CSPA. And the good thing is we've been discussing CSPA for many times in the radio program. So the questions were, even if we give updates and everything, it's really very helpful. This radio program, also like discussing it with immigration lawyers, and they learn a lot from, and we learn a lot from the program. The good thing about and it's nice to be on the conference, because we also collaborated and met many other immigration attorneys. I met with Filipino lawyers, and probably Kuya Johan, sa isa sa mga programa natin later on would be to invite them, just to discuss important issues about immigration or anything about Philippine immigration, or rather Filipino immigrating to the US, or other aspect. But nonetheless, the good thing about what happened during the conference, there was a decision from the U.S. Supreme Court, right, affirming President Biden's immigration enforcement. During President Trump's time, ang enforcement priority nila is anyone in the U.S. who overstayed their visa, right, or commit, not only those who committed crimes or committed fraud, but anyone else who have overstayed their visa are enforcement priority. Now, during President Biden's presidency, when he took office, he changed that to like, ang enforcement priority nila would be yung present government, present administration would be only for people who have or a threat to national security, or they are terrorists. No, so very yung enforcement priority, yun ang hinuhuli ng ICE, right? So those people who have overstayed are not enforcement priority. So yung mga kababayan natin na may mga removal proceedings ngayon, right, we can again request for a prosecutorial discretion to either dismiss your case or terminate the case. It might be a good idea also, Kuya Johan, to be one of the topics in the future about this prosecutorial discretion and the policy of the current administration.
Definitely. Congratulations po sa iyo, Attorney Diza. Isa po siya, mga kaibigan, sa mga speakers ng malaking conference na ito. As he said, thousands of immigration lawyers from all over the world ang nag-attend dito. At isa po si Attorney Diza sa mga speakers. At ito po isang testament po sa expertise ni Attorney Diza sa usaping immigration. Attorney,
I was kind of like afraid, Kuya Johan, that magtatagalog ako during the conference or mag-Ilocano. I was joking with the other Filipino lawyers na, I've been with televisions, Philippine televisions and radio, pero usually Tagalog or Taglish ang ating usapan. So baka mapatagalog or Taglish ako. I was kind of like at the back of my mind, I should not speak Tagalog. Kasi I usually nagtatagalog tayo dito. But fortunately, good enough, it went very well.
All right. Wonderful. And congratulations once again to you and everyone at Reeves Immigration Law Group. And mabuhay po kayo, Attorney Diza, at dala-dala nyo yung bandila ng Pilipinas sa malaking conference na ito. Attorney, I'll give you this time. Baka meron po kayong mga gustong i-announce or baka may mga na-meet kayo dun sa conference na gusto nyong konting shoutout dyan.
Yes, yung sa Florida, Kuya Johan, I think kilala nila yung ating isang host dito. I think si Tara is from Florida.
Yes.
The lawyers that I met knows her, right? And also the New York-based lawyers, they were saying they know PHLV radio. And one of them, I think, already guested at this station. And I was telling them, like, look, even if you practice immigration, we don't have problem because we don't have exclusive contract with PHLV radio. And it's going to be a friendly competition anyway. It's a public service, right? So regardless of whether you practice immigration or other line of practice, you are welcome to be guest at PHLV Radio or be one of the sponsor ng PHLV Radio. And again, maraming salamat, Kuya Johan. At by the way, my free legal consultation ang IBP every first Friday of the month dito sa San Francisco, California sa Sutter Street. So there are Filipino lawyers rendering free legal consultation, not only immigration but also laws involving the Philippines. Kung may problema kayo sa lupa, sa inheritance, or anything under the sun, marami pong lawyers dyan sa San Francisco Consulate every first Friday of the month. Meron po tayo ngayon sa July 7. Ang Reeves Immigration Law Group po, kikita nyo ang ating phone number sa screen for 155683777. Like our Facebook page and all our social media and set a consultation with us. Marami pong salamat at mabuhay tayong lahat. Thank you, Kuya Johan.
Mabuhay po kayo, Attorney Diza. Galing po sa San Francisco, California. Attorney Diza, partner at Reeves Immigration Law Group. We've been doing this many years already. Public service po para sa inyo. Anytime po, pwede po kayong kumontak sa amin dito sa PHLV Radio at papaabot po namin kay Attorney Diza ang inyong mga tanong hinggil po sa immigration. Ang Immigration Law on Your Side, mga kababayan, ay supported by Reeves Immigration Law Group and it plays on PHLV Radio every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Time. And pwede po ninyong mapanood at mapakinggan ang mga replays nito sa iba't ibang mga platforms tulad ng Facebook, YouTube, Amazon Fire TV. And syempre, kung nasa BART kayo, kung nandiyan kayo sa New York, nandiyan kayo sa subway, di baunin nyo na lang ang aming program by downloading our podcast ng PHLV Radio's Immigration Law on Your Side. Nandyan po tayo sa Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio at iba't ibang mga platform pa. So, Attorney, maraming salamat once again. And mga kababayan, we will see you next time only here on Immigration Law on Your Side right here po sa PHLV Radio.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has been representing immigrants for nearly 40 years. Reeves Immigration Law Group has been fighting for its clients through experience and expertise. With immigration lawyers you can access at reasonable fees, even on Saturday. Payment plans are also available. Call us for your immigration solutions. We can do worldwide telephone and Skype consultations. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009. Reeves Immigration Law Group has offices in Los Angeles, San Francisco, China, and Philippines. See us at www.rreeves.com. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has just brought you Immigration Law on Your Side. Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Pacific on PHLV Radio.